Hi, I'm Andy. I'm with the Fintech Times. I'm here with, could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure, Mike Laven, the CEO of Currencycloud.
Wonderful. So, Mike, I've got a few questions for you. Firstly, how are you enjoying the show? I know it's just started, but what are you looking forward to here?
Well, first of all, this is the first time in perhaps 2 years that I've been to such a large event in person.
Yeah.
And I used to, if I go look back a couple of years ago, do a lot of speaking and a lot of panels. And this is the first in-person one I've done in a long time. So I think the most exciting thing is just to physically see people, to see the companies on the board, to see the other CEOs who I know. I mean, I've been part of the London Fintech scene for a long time, and for 2 years I really haven't seen anybody. So what I look forward to is just really the interaction of seeing my colleagues and seeing the people I'm sort of been working with consistently for 10 years or so.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people are feeling today. There's a lot of relief to be sort of back to normal, I guess, if you can call it that. So the first thing I wanted to start off with, Mike, was what are you finding are the major trends that we're seeing in fintech currently as an industry?
So first of all, there's the digitization that started with the pandemic. Is the massive move away from cash to digital in terms of banking and in terms of pretty much everything. So that continues. I think secondly, looking forward, we're going to have to find a way at a regulatory level and a government policy level to live with the massive move into crypto.
Right.
Right now, because of the banks that I deal with and the regulators that I deal with, it's very hard for the Currencycloud to work in a crypto world. But each customer that I talk to is under pressure, each individual is under pressure, and the banks are under pressure. There's going to have to be a regulatory accommodation that figures out how we deal with the move to digital assets, Web 3.0, distributed finance, in a way that brings it inside the fold, inside the regulatory fold. Again, I think if you read about it, there was a large article in the FT over the weekend that the digital finance world still stays outside of the security that you get in terms of regulation. It's there in terms of AML. I think that is going to have to change.
Right.
We would love to be able to process more crypto, or companies that do crypto, but we can't. And we can't until the regulators and the banks allow us to. But I think there's going to have to be an accommodation to that going forward. I think, as we talked about earlier today, we're in an inflationary environment where there's pressure on consumers, whether it's 8 or 10% UK monthly inflation. A lot of things that we did in fintech in the last few years have been based on a low to small interest rate. Basically no interest rate, which made people often indifferent of where their money is.
Yeah.
I think that could change dramatically in terms of where it is. So listen, we are in Currencycloud in terms of the moving of money transfers. Money transfers are moving towards zero time and minimal cost. And that trend on a global basis continues. The world has got to move to instant, and the world has got to move to as cheap as possible. And that trend is dramatic, and the fintech firms have spearheaded it, and it will keep going.
So obviously you've touched on sort of regulatory. What are the other kind of threats that you see to the sort of expansion of this?
Well, I mean, listen, regulation, of course, is very important, and the regulators, not just in the UK but everywhere else, have a responsibility to protect consumers and to protect stability, and we sort of respect that and know that. I'd say there's the UK in terms of the development of the industry. You've heard it in today's panel in the beginning, and you'll hear it all through the conference. Is we're always really concerned about talent. Is that there is a global, as more money comes into investment in fintech, and you have more fintech firms, and you have financial services moving out of large banks, there's going to be a global competition, and there is a global competition for talent. Yeah. The work from home nature of the pandemic meant that that's no longer a local competition, it's a global competition. So if I find the world's best person who wants to work for me in Spain, I'm going to be able to hire them. But that also means that every other firm in the world can actually go find for that person as well. So the limited market that I have has now become a totally global market for talent. So I think in terms of the development of fintech firms, talent is important. I think Mark made the point this morning that because of that, the UK will have to make sure it invests more and more and more in technical talent to fuel the industry, just because you're going to have to look to home as much as you did before. So.
Really interesting. I caught the end of that, and I heard a very interesting question that he posed regarding, does money chase talent or does talent chase money? What was your sort of take on that?
So let me see if I would put it. Talent chases innovation and interesting jobs. And so top talent in coding or in marketing or wherever it is wants to be where things are interesting. And so the question to me is not so much money, I guess he's looking at it in terms of investment, is top talent always wants to be at the creative edge. And I think the venture money that's fueled fintech will fuel that creative edge, and talent will go where there's creativity. The UK has been incredibly creative. I mean, listen, and it takes all kinds of jobs to make things go forward. But if you look at where all of that incoming investment goes at the early stages, it goes into innovation, and talent will flow where the innovation is, and the money will follow the talent. So I guess to answer to your question, money follows the talent, and the talent follows the innovation.
Right. That's a great answer. So what would you say are some of the key drivers of innovation in fintech?
Well, listen, access or I guess financial inclusion. But by financial inclusion, I mean that very broadly. Lower prices, better services, more data, more responsibility, open access. So inclusion, very broadly stated, are something. And then also the massive decrease. Again, bringing costs down. I mean, one of the drivers initially of fintech, and still is a driver, is finding areas of inefficiency in consumer finance, in small business finance, and in capital markets, where inefficiency drives up cost. And remember, one of the theories behind the internet, which applies exactly to fintech, is to find areas of friction and smooth them out. Friction, sorry, not fiction. Friction. Maybe some fiction as well. But find areas of friction and to smooth them out. And by smoothing them out, reducing everybody's costs through automation. So I think that's incredibly important.
Brilliant. And what would you say are some of the challenges facing the industry? I know you touched upon it in terms of regulation within, crypto, but what are some of the other broader challenges?
So listen, it'll always be talent.
Yeah.
Remember, the way I put it is that the talent doesn't follow the code follows the talent.
Right.
So talent will always be the major challenge. When you're a small company, trying to get your few initial employees, when you're a larger company trying to fuel your scale up. So talent will always be a problem. In the UK, access to scale up capital. Again, this was one of the major things in the Khalifa report, that the UK actually does a very good job on early stage finance.
Yeah.
Lots of good early stage venture investors. The more companies that do IPOs or acquisitions, that means you have more and more people. You get that Silicon Valley, beneficial cycle of more people with enough money to take a risk. And so I think that cycle in the UK is starting to happen. The UK has still fairly short of that next stage of capital. Khalifa is trying to address that. But I think we still have more in the UK to do in terms of scale-up funds. The next, not that first, 10 million, but that last 100 million. You still have to look outside the UK to international or even very much US investors to go there and do that.
And regarding talent, again, which is a really sort of, as you say, one of the key drivers. I mean, one of the solutions that I've heard is more investment at sort of grassroots level and, for the longer term. Is this something that you sort of subscribe to?
Yeah, so listen, we hire people. We have, now that we're a larger company, actually, this is quite interesting, we have entry-level jobs. I think when we were a much smaller company, we didn't have that many jobs to start with, but now we do have a lot of entry-level jobs for which we can hire recent school leavers, we can hire interns, and so the more that you have investment in coding academies to have people switch careers, you have people investment in whether it's secondary education or universities, so we can get people coming out. I think that's incredibly important. So grass level, remember we still are a technical company, so you have to have some degree of technical literacy. So the degree to which we can get people with technical literacy early in their careers or their lives. I mean, often I sit down next to an employee and I ask them, who I haven't seen, and I ask them, where was your previous job? And they look at me and say, this is my first job. And I think to do that, we need to have people who come up, not totally trained, but reasonably trained.
Right. Brilliant. And finally, where do you see the rest of 2022 and beyond for Currencycloud? What's in the pipeline?
So listen, our business is growing well. I think, as I had mentioned upstairs, the environment has dramatically changed. I think the war in the Ukraine and inflation, sanctions, changed the playing field a lot. We've seen some changes in the way flows are going. But listen, we are continuing to grow incredibly well. We've expanded this year. One of our themes was the expansion in Asia Pacific. We've invested heavily in Singapore. The world has to become, in terms of the world that we're looking into, is 24/7, instant and global. And our investments in the US and in Asia are sort of helping us to get there. So it's an investment year. Well, I guess every year is an investment year, but we're still growing. We see the UK money transfer business, both in terms of remittances and in business payments, growing. One thing I will mention is that, I think it came up a little bit in the stage this morning, is with the massive influx of refugees to Eastern Europe, we've seen a real growth in small transfers to the countries on the periphery of the UK, Hungary, Romania, Poland, so on and so forth, which is great, which is families taking care of themselves. So, we'll continue to grow, we'll continue to invest on a global basis, and we'll continue to try and weather the storm, whichever way it goes.
Wonderful. Mike at Currencycloud, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.